vote nay, and then I get pitchforks coming at me.
Yeah, I know.
I was gonna come at like 10 to 9. I don't want to confuse anybody.
You put the motion in the ocean, John.
The league's doing it? The league is strong. Yes. I will.
I feel like I'm floating all over.
It was in front of Officer Jeff.
Good evening. I want to call to order this meeting of the Town of Wendell Board of Commissioners and welcome you all. Thank you for being here tonight. We are going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight by Quentin Say. If you can come to the podium, please, Quentin. Quentin is a fourth grader at Lake Myra Elementary School. He has been part of the Lake Myra Elementary School community since kindergarten, so that's several years. He's creative and kind to his friends, and Quentin has worked extremely hard to overcome obstacles. Good for you. I'm very proud of that. He's shown amazing growth and perseverance, and the staff at Lake Myra Elementary is so proud of his progress. He's demonstrated great leadership, especially this year, so you're having a great school year, aren't you? Good for you. All right, everybody can rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all.
Thank you very much, Quentin. Our invocation tonight from the Wendell Council of Churches is from St. Eugene's Catholic Church, and we're going to hear from Brother Emmanuel Mandona. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you. Okay, let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of life and for all the blessings we continue to receive from you, especially for gathering us together as a community to share our experiences and to seek for your guidance. We ask you to be with us and to fill us with your wisdom so that all we do may contribute for the edification of your kingdom. All of this we ask in Jesus' name, as we said, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us tonight.
You're welcome.
Do we have a motion? Is there any adjustments to the agenda tonight? A motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Do we not need to make a motion to move an item? I think we need to make a motion to move number 6 after number 9. I'm sorry if you weren't informed about that.
That's okay.
So can I get a motion to move item 6A and 6B? We're just going to deal with it after number 9, not going to renumber.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda, to move the item 6A and 6B to after item number 9, and with that change, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve after we move 6A and B to after number 9. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, public comment. We have some people signed up for public comment tonight. The very first one is Judy Arnold. Can you step forward, please? The light's going to come on, and when it's green, you have, was it 3 minutes? and the
Talk
yellow
fast.
will come on and let you know when you're about to run out, and then
Okay.
when you're out of time, it'll be on on 5. We
Okay.
haven't had anyone speak in a while, so I thought I'd revisit that. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, at the meeting last time about the Hollybrook Road thing, the question was brought up as to why we had not, y'all hadn't heard anything about us, not approving this. And on November the 16th, I emailed David and asked him, and his response was that the notification requirements are tied to public meetings. The only previous meeting in which the conditional district was discussed was the planning board meeting. They are just an advisory board. The planning board meetings are open to the public to attend if they wish, but it's not a public hearing. They're not meant to be primary forum for gathering input. That's what the town board public hearings are for. Where there's nothing on the website concerning any minutes, the last minutes posted are February 2018. So I'm not sure how we were supposed to know about it. We were notified by letter October 26th of a meeting on November the 13th, and one small sign was placed out at Angleview Drive. So I assume November 13th was the first time we had a chance to voice our opinions. And that's why we've not spoken up. I'm a real estate paralegal, so I look at everything, and Smith Edwards has a deed of trust to NBR for $600,000 on this property. And in paragraph 4 of it, it says there's no alterations without consent of the beneficiary, who is NBR Inc., not Smith Edwards. So who is in charge of this conditional district? And then we already voiced our concerns about the covenants, but by accepting the 2 deeds from Price to Edwards, then Edwards to Smith Edwards, by accepting the deed, they agreed to abide by the restricted covenants. So, and the town attorney addressed this, so hopefully that's going to be enforced. Also at this time, you know, my dad, James Green, who is now 86 years old, he's got 9 lots that are going to be coming up right behind his house. There's no berm, there's nothing. You drive down Hollybrook Road, you see every kind of fence, you see weeds between the fences, you see kudzu on the side of the road, you know, no conformity. So I would like to see some type of berm with some type of, that would be maintained by the HOA. If not, his property is going to be devalued. And he's not listed as an adjoining property under the master subdivision plans for some reason, but he did receive notice. Let me see if there's anything else. And I have the notes about Hollybrook Road. My problem is the turn lane from Hollybrook, from 231 to Hollybrook. I'm not sure why we're funneling more people down Hollybrook Road. And the DMV thing does not cover that at all. And I'm not asking to get rid of the subdivision. I want it bigger lots and less homes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. David Arnold?
I assume that everyone has read the TIA from DOT. I've read it several times, 90 pages of indecipherable jibber jabber. As far as I can tell, it's just numbers that really don't have much explanation, other than the fact that one of the points that's made is that there will be added 3,197 trips per day from these subdivisions. And right now, if you leave Hollybrook Road and go up and meet the buses in the morning, you're going to turn on Redberry or Harris or on Forest or on Dogwood or on Haywood to get over to Cypress to be able to turn on First to get to Wendell Boulevard. Most people aren't inclined to go out, Wendell Falls Boulevard. Most people aren't inclined to go out to Wendell Boulevard because you can't get there. And when you get there, it stops at high traffic times. So the scope of the TIA stops at Forest Lane. Well, the problems just begin at Forest Lane. So I think this needs to be reassessed and have a little more realistic view of what's going on. Judy mentioned the NVR aspect. NVR does business as Ryan Homes. Ryan Homes builds homes all over the Wake County area, all over North Carolina, all up and down the East Coast. Ryan Homes is the same company that was sued successfully by the state of Delaware because they did not come through with the types of amenities that are being promised for this subdivision. They didn't come through with those, and they were sued for consumer fraud, and the case was won by the state of Delaware. It just seems to me there's a rush to get this done, and we've not had a lot of time for input. We've been busting it to do some research in the last 2 weeks to find out exactly what's going on. It seems that everything went in, the whole process was done by the developer before there was any public input. And so that would make me think that, yes, they've got this in the bag before they ever started. And public input means very, very little. What's the process and when does it become approved by the town as opposed to have input from the citizens who actually have to live out there? Whose interests are being represented here? The citizens of the community or the developers? I think that's a very important question that needs to be asked and answered before these kinds of cluster homes go in. I too understand that development is inevitable, but to have this type of development is not inevitable.
Thank you.
And
Time's up. Thank you.
Wendell can do something about it.
Ann Stewart.
Hi, I hate to question,
Can you give me your name and address?
Ann Stewart, Hollybrook Road, Wendell, corner of Dogwood, which is in the beaten path here. But I noticed that you're going to have 339 units. Each unit will have at least 2 people going to work each day. Husband and wife. That's the general thing these days. Plus, some may have teenagers with cars. You need to double their estimate on here. There would be 245 trips going out in the morning and 328 coming home. I don't know where they're going other than home, but anyway. That needs to be doubled. And we're going to end up just like Wendell Boulevard on Hollybrook Road. No one will be able to get on it because I don't see any feasible way of widening all of Hollybrook Road, because there are things like the library and so forth that are built pretty close to it. And they will go directly up to Wendell Boulevard and hit the Wendell Elementary traffic again. It's going to be a mess, just a big mess. And I hate that you're going back on the planning that the other commissioners did and allowing smaller lots. Our schools are failing. You know that, I know that. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 3, we have no items on the consent agenda tonight. Item number 4 is the recognition of Lake Myra Elementary School Jill Burtis. Could you stand right up here? Miss Burtis is a 4th grade teacher, and she actually is Quentin's teacher at Lake Myra Elementary School. She's taught at Lake Myra for the last 6 years as 4th and 5th grade teacher. Prior to that, she worked at Lockhart Elementary for 5 years, and then taught, prior to that, 3 years in Utah and 3 years in Maryland. So you have a varied amount of experience. Jill works diligently to create and maintain positive relationships with her students and their families. She meets the individual needs of all students by differentiating her instruction. She has been a team leader among her colleagues and demonstrates what it means to go the extra mile for her kids. We just wanted to have you here tonight and thank you for all the things that you do for our kids in Wendell. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there anything you'd like to say, or?
No, I'm good.
What's the best thing that happened at school today? What happened today?
I just had a happy kids today,
Well,
and
that's
that
nice.
always makes my day.
Well, that's good. That's a
Good.
good thing. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Item number 5 is the recognition of the Eastern Wake Senior Center. Commissioner Myrick is going to introduce the ladies that we're going to hear from.
Yes, Mayor, fellow commissioners, tonight we're going to recognize our Eastern Wake Senior Center, which is located right here in Wendell. They were recently awarded the Ann Johnson Senior Center of the Year Award by the North Carolina Senior Center Alliance, and we're very proud of them for that. Tonight, Ms. Norma Farrell and Miranda Strider Allen are here to give us an overview of the Senior Center.
Thank you very much for having us come out tonight, and thank y'all for allow us to tell you a little bit about our senior center. But first, I want to say on behalf of the seniors and Resources for Seniors, I would like to thank Mayor Gray and the board and this town for all the support they've gave us for the senior center. It is growing, and more people are moving in this area, and it's because of support that y'all gave us, and we appreciate that. The North Carolina Senior Center Alliance is a statewide organization for the senior center professionals to advocate for senior centers, network and collaborate in common issues, share information, co-market initiatives, and provide staff training and development. The Senior Center Alliance is composed of steering committees that serve to manage the businesses and affairs of the Alliance. The steering committee consists of one delegate from each of the 16 regions of North Carolina. Members of the steering committee worked with 6 subcommittees with the Alliance, which is advocating for senior centers, marketing, membership committee, mentoring, and then the special projects committee. It was the special projects committee that implemented the Ann Johnson Award 3 years ago, and it was approved by the steering committee. This honor is for the late Ann Johnson, who was known as a pioneer for aging and major advocacy for seniors. The North Carolina Senior Center Alliance, this prestigious award for her, in honor for Ms. Johnson, and highlighted senior centers that have made a significant contributions to the field of aging. During her career, Ms. Johnson was a leader of the aging provider network in the state, as well as on national scene, particularly in the development of standards for adult care programs and the senior centers. With a strong passion for senior centers and the work that she did, she dedicated herself to serve on the board of the National Council on Aging, chair of the National Institute of Senior Centers, and Ms. Johnson passed away in October 2014 at the age of 94, and the majority of her life was dealing with seniors. It's very humbling for a senior center to be nominated by one of the seniors and not the staff or their businesses. And so on November the 15th, on behalf of the North Carolina Senior Center Alliance Special Projects Committee, Christy Southall was a member of the Alliance, came to Wendell and presented this award to Norma and to Brittany and to the seniors. And so I'm going to ask Norma to give you a little bit more about the reasons the Senior Center won this award.
I'm going to read this letter on behalf of the senior that wrote it. And this explains all of the things that we do and why we were recognized and were able to receive this award. Eastern Wake Senior Center is an active adult center serving members 55 and up and the community. Eastern Wake Senior Center is recognized by the state as a center of excellence. The staff includes the members and community in creating programs and services. The staff will go above and beyond the call of duty to meet the needs of the people. They offer a variety of health and wellness programs, health screenings, information and referral assistance, Medicare counseling, legal aid and case management assistance. They also offer a variety of evidence-based fitness classes that are recognized by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. These fitness classes are designed to help decrease lower extremity arthritis, osteoporosis, and increase muscle strength, flexibility, balance, and endurance. The health and wellness programs and screenings include, but are not limited to, mammograms, blood pressure and glucose checks, flu shot clinics, cooking and nutrition classes, and a host of education classes to enhance and support their overall health and well-being. The Senior Center has conducted awards programs that were designed for each member to nominate their peers. This program was designed in honor of Older Americans Month and to allow them to encourage and appreciate each other in efforts to be the people that they aspire to be. They also started a family and friends event that included all members of the center, their friends and families, to share in all the programs and events that they love and participate in daily. This family event has increased the number and participation each year. This has also increased the awareness of the Senior Center and its services, programs available to the community. Within the last year, the attendance and inquiries have increased by 22%. The Senior Center has partnered with many organizations and businesses in the community to help spread the word and create awareness of all the wonderful programs Eastern Wake has to offer. Letters were mailed to the local health professionals describing the evidence-based fitness classes. The Town of Wendell, Parks and Recreation Department, the mayor, the town commissioner, and other businesses advertise our events and encourage the community to take advantage of the free services that are available. Also, the Senior Center partners with Wake Tech Community College for education and fitness classes. Wake Tech offers computer, Spanish, yoga, and balance classes at our center weekly. They partner with Meals on Wheels in our congregational dining hall to support nutritional needs and social needs daily. The center has an active and influential auxiliary committee that is made up of volunteers and members of the Senior Center. This group is the voice that advocates for the members' needs, wants, and well-being of the Senior Center as a whole. Within the last year, the staff and auxiliary committee worked diligently with the Town of Wendell to install new toilets throughout the facility. This improved the health and safety of the members and visitors. The auxiliary committee raised funds to advocate for ADA doors to be installed in the Senior Center. The staff and auxiliary committee worked with the Town of Wendell, and the doors were installed August of 2017. The doors provide safe entry and exit to our facility. Another project that the auxiliary committee and the Town of Wendell partnered on was to install new signage in the community to increase awareness. Initially, there were 2 small signs near the center, and now there are new colorful signs matching the town's colors with directional arrows. The new signs will enhance the attendance and participation at the center. The staff and volunteers have also participated in community festivals and events to spread the word about the importance of the Senior Center in the community and what it offers to all that they serve. Changes are constantly occurring in relation to older adults in the form of Senior Center funding, Medicare, Social Security, and funding for people with disabilities. Eastern Wake offers many advocacy opportunities to encourage our state representatives to support these programs. These programs will allow the older adults to maintain their independence as much as possible. The members are always encouraged to advocate for themselves as well as their peers. The staff of the center believe that there is power in numbers, so they offer events to spread the word and encourage as many as they can to do what is right for themselves and the community by sending emails, letters, and making phone calls. Resources for Seniors is the parent company, and the Senior Center impacts them by making referrals to callers, members, visitors, and the community about the services available. The Senior Center distributes marketing information and directories daily. The Senior Center shares the same facility with the Total Life Center, also a part of Resources for Seniors, and the members become familiar with their services for their families and friends. Overall, Eastern Wake Senior Center is a great place to be. The staff strives to exceed all expectations by going above and beyond the call of duty. The staff are highly educated and well-trained in areas of health and wellness, as well as case management assistance. The relationships that have been formed with the Town of Wendell and some of the businesses throughout the community have been very positive. The main priority for the staff and counselors are to serve the members. The Senior Center is known to be a small center that generally packs a big punch, with the many activities offered. The senior center lives by the motto, go big or go home, and that is what they do. Eastern Wake Senior Center is very deserving of this grant because they are the people's center and greatness is what they strive for. This money will be used toward getting signage for the building. There is not a sign at this time on the building that tells the community who they are and what they do. Increasing awareness is a continued process to increase the awareness of the senior center in the community. Thank you in advance for this opportunity, and they look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you for letting us share this.
Thank you. Congratulations. That's quite an honor. Very proud of y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Item number 7 is a presentation of policy for the town of Wendell regarding street clearance prioritization. And we're going to hear from Special Assistant to the Manager, Sherry Scoggins.
Okay. All right. Okay. Madam Mayor and Board, before you this evening is a policy for the town of Wendell on street clearance prioritization. First and foremost is the safety of our residents and our staff. This is especially applicable during times of inclement weather. When the climate turns harsh, the town of Wendell strives to maintain business as usual by keeping roads passable both during and following an event. And I believe you all witnessed that during Michael and Florence. Public work crews, equipment, and vehicles deploy when conditions are safe. Recognizing that resources of staff and equipment are limited, the street clearance prioritization policy was created to describe the hierarchy of the roads to be served during severe weather. And a communications initiative is included within the policy to serve as a guide when informing our residents of the measures that are being taken by the town during such incidents. So before you this evening is the policy, and the goal is for the board to provide direction, and then based on that direction, the possible action is placement on your December 10th consent agenda.
Does anyone have any questions or comments about it that they?
I noticed it says historically icy areas. One of the historically icy areas is the steep slope at the end of Main Street that has historically not been cleared so that the kids have somewhere to go sled. Y'all familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, we stopped that a while back.
I know we did. And
you know how the police can be.
I would love to. You know, it's not exactly a dead end part of the street or whatever, but and I brought this up with Wendell Falls that if they would leave one of those big hills of dirt for somewhere to go sledding, because I really hated to see kids going into construction areas and stuff, doing sledding and things like that. And I always thought that end of Main Street was always pretty quiet, even though it ties into Folks. So I mean, I'll just put it out there. I'd love to see that come back. But if the police didn't think it was a good idea, then so be it. But my bigger question was how are we determining historically icy areas? Because if I have a tree in my front yard that shades the road, well, that's going to be a historically icy area. So is that just code for problem areas, or how's that going to be determined?
I'll have to get with Public Works to see if they've got a list. I'm only thinking of one that comes to mind, and that's on Wendell Boulevard near Kirkhill, where it's extremely
Two
slippery.
hills that come together, and people slide out into Wendell Boulevard coming
Yes,
down
ma'am.
that hill.
Yeah, and that's not our intent is for you to stop at the sign. We
Yeah.
don't want folks coming through.
Agreed.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Potentially it's vague on purpose because it can change over time. Just cutting down a tree can
Make
make
it not
a
icy anymore.
historically icy area not icy anymore. So I think historically might be where we've received complaints and calls over past events, maintaining a list and going and making sure those are taken care of.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else? So do we need a motion to place this on the consent agenda for next time?
Please, if that's the,
Okay,
So moved.
all right, so we have a motion to place this on the consent agenda on the December 10th meeting. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
all right, thank you.
thank you, ma'am. Item number 8 is a presentation of policy for the town of Wendell regarding sidewalk petition processes and the town sidewalk program. I'm going to hear from Town Manager Mark Collins. Good evening, Mr. Collins.
Good evening. Like the last policy issue, this policy issue is also presented to you for consideration tonight with no action expected. If the board so chooses, we can place it on the agenda for December 10th for either decision or if there's no big discussion, then it might be a good consent item. Local government sidewalk programs typically have many parts and process to handle a lot of the different responsibilities. They typically have some form of repair and maintenance program. There's an acceptance of developer constructed sidewalks. There's greenways and alternative transportation routes. There's your transportation pedestrian plan ranking system. There's also one that the town currently doesn't have, and that's a means for the public to petition for sidewalks to be placed along their roads. So that's the policy before you tonight. It was a policy that was recommended in the adopted 2017 Comprehensive Pedestrian Plan, and we'll go over that a little bit in the purpose of the policy. The commission has talked about in the past at your retreat the need for sidewalks in this program. You've directed staff to review comparative programs and then to bring back this policy, and so that's why it's before you tonight. Looking at the policy itself, it's divided into several sections. The first is the purpose of the policy, and I'll walk you through it tonight. If you have any questions between now and next month, feel free to reach out to myself, and I can work with staff to work on that in any way you need. But the first is the purpose. The purpose is set out, it's in your adopted plan, pedestrian plan. And it recommends that the development of a sidewalk petition process and budget allocation to handle spot improvements. The policy allows citizens to make requests for short sidewalk connections that will fill gaps in the pedestrian network. After implementation, the program will be promoted to citizens and used as a public outreach tool to provide information on results achieved. So that's the guidance in your adopted plan. Also in that plan, it identifies a vision for sidewalks in the town, that the comprehensive sidewalk program seeks to achieve the vision of Wendell, where people of all ages can walk safely within the community for transportation, exercise, and enjoyment. So that's the overarching vision seeking to be achieved through implementing a sidewalk program. In looking at comparative practices, there's a little bit of terminology and how things are ranked, but in general, most of the sidewalk petition programs that I found around the state and around the country have the criteria found within this policy. Starting with the petition application process, David, I've selected planning department to receive applications and deal with petition processes. That's a typical assignment for them. Public Works is in the implementation and maintenance and repair of the sidewalks. Planning departments are better in petition processes and due process criteria review. So the planning department would receive those. And then any recommended funding could be placed in a 5-year capital improvement plan. And all projects are always subject to funding availability in the annual budget process. So you can receive a lot of projects. If you don't have the money, projects don't get done. The sidewalk petition process itself starts with a nomination form. That has to have at least 25% of the affected property owners complete the application, so that spurious applications aren't just submitted, one person on the street and everybody else doesn't like it. Person keeps putting that in. At least 25% on the sidewalk stretch have to be part of the application. That makes it a serious application and worth staff's time to break off and work on, as well as a demonstration of initial interest and awareness of the project in the neighborhood. The planning department staff does the review based on the prioritization criteria in this policy. As part of that, they will go out and poll, do a petition for all the property owners along that stretch. At least 70% of the property owners have to agree and sign the petition for the project to move forward under this process. Projects that have that property owner support are then put into the budget process each year. If there's funding available that year and no other projects in the queue, it could move on that year. If there's a highly competitive or other projects in the queue for that year, it could be put into the 5-year funding stream or an out year for consideration by the commission. Projects that have insufficient but still are high ranking are kept as, excuse me, will remain on the ranking list, and they'll be reevaluated after a 3-year period. This provides for a regular review to make sure that conditions haven't gotten worse and people's sentiments may change over time for projects that are valued. Nothing prevents the town from installing a sidewalk section and doing what it needs to do that's allowed under law outside of this process, but this is just the citizen-based process. So looking at what criteria staff in the town would consider in reviewing applications, starting first with accessibility criteria. Does it provide access to a school? Does it provide access to recreation parks or greenways? Is it providing access to a job center, getting people to work or to spend money in commercial areas? Does it provide access to a public facility like town hall, the senior center, the library? If it's providing close or good access to that, then it scores more points. Obviously, the further away it is, fewer points. Another main criteria the town needs to consider in a sidewalk installation is safety. You're dealing with average daily traffic, so if there's high traffic areas, then you're looking at more points, lower traffic, fewer points. If there have been crashes within the project area, increases the number of points, depending on the distance of the sidewalk to where crashes occur. The speed limit along the street also. If the higher the speed limit, 35 miles per hour, 4 points. Under that at 25 miles per hour or less, 2 points. The type of street also plays into safety. If you have a thoroughfare with no sidewalks along it, then you need sidewalks to get pedestrians away from traffic in a safe manner. Going down to a cul-de-sac, dead-end street, very short street, not being worth points because of low traffic safety concern. Next section deals with connectivity and need-based criteria. If you think of connectivity as shortening the distance a pedestrian has to take to get to one of those things you're connecting to. So if you're having to go up Hollybrook to Wendell Boulevard, over to another street on the sidewalk and then come down to the place, if the sidewalk petition cuts off some of that and reduces the distance to something, then it's scoring points. And one thing that we see often around Wendell is evidence of pedestrian use. It's similar to what you would see on a college campus where they won't put down the sidewalks until after the students have walked. We have a lot of those used paths around town where we can tell that there's evidence of use if there was a sidewalk. So that would score points. Project support, the more points above the 70% criteria, the more points are scored. If it's in an adopted plan, it's scoring points. Then there's also ways to get negative points in any criteria. Constructability, so if we're dealing with utility relocates, removal of big trees, topographic concerns, stormwater utilities, all those things that will add to the cost and limit the ability to have impact, all reduce points off of that scoring system. So that's the pedestrian criteria for the sidewalk policy. And if you have any questions at this time, happy to take them now. Again, it's being provided to you this meeting just for your awareness and review. If you have any questions or concerns, let us know. If you'd like to move forward and put it on next month's agenda, we'd be glad to move on it then.
Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Council, the Section 2 accessibility criteria, specifically like access to a school, the way I'm reading it, 0.1 to 0.2 miles is 5 points. Is that correct?
Right. So that if it's within basically a block or two of a school,
okay,
then you're getting more points. If you're further away, you get fewer points.
okay. I was thinking the length of the sidewalks. I was thinking we were doing the exact opposite of what we're doing. Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Anyone else? Okay.
A few years ago, we had quite a few people wanted to put in place a process for lowering speed limits in residential neighborhoods. And we worked long and hard on a process for citizens to petition to lower speed limits in town. It seemed to be quite a big issue, and I do think it's a safety issue. But we put in place some criteria and getting neighbors on board and all those other things. And I'm sad to say that as far as I know, we have gotten 0 petitions, even from the neighborhood that originally requested it. Has there been a big request for sidewalks to be put in, and how much do you think this is going to be implemented? I mean, how many requests do you expect to receive?
Yeah. Well, to my knowledge, the town has not received any in the past 3 months I've been here. How many it may or may not have in the past, I'm not sure. I mean, it is a recommended policy addition in the adopted pedestrian plan. And you wouldn't receive any if there's not a process to receive. So if we have a process and we promote them, then it's an opportunity to receive them. If we do not receive them, I would argue with the mileage of sidewalks that we currently have that need to be repaired and replaced at this time, there's lots of staff-derived projects that'll move forward on the other 3 areas that'll be highly competitive, as well as the projects already in your plan to implement as well. This just provides for a complete sidewalk program in addition to repair and maintenance, the sidewalks that developers put in, the sidewalk improvements in the pedestrian plan, as well as any other greenway and health-related recreational trail connectivity to other parts of town as well. So it's a way for, as the community grows, and some of the traffic concerns that you hear about happen as more and more people live in our area, the greater Wendell area, then some of the neighborhoods that may not have had a problem may need a process to reach out to the town and go, hey, we'd really like y'all to look at our neighborhood now. Never thought we'd say that, but we need it now.
Well, when you do find a good place to advertise this, as you say, I would request that at the same time also, inform that we also have the process for lowering speed limits in neighborhoods. Not on state roads, but in neighborhoods. It's a very similar process.
Cool.
Anything else?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to place this on the, December 10th agenda for action.
All right, we have a motion to place it on the December 10th agenda, the consent agenda, or
The consent agenda is fine, yes, please.
Okay, consent agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. All right, item number 9 is an update on board committees by town board members, and I'm the only one, Campo, and apparently the date was changed to move off of Thanksgiving. We usually meet, it would have been last Wednesday, the Wednesday afternoon at 4, prior to Thanksgiving, and I thought that was a weird time, but I was all ready to go, and then I found out they'd met the week before, and for some reason, I didn't receive the notice. Ms. Scoggins was not aware of the change either, but I did go and find out some information from them, and the good news is they had the same program essentially that I had heard a week or two before at the Triangle J about transportation. So very often, whenever there's something big going on, and especially in government, those programs and that information kind of travels from place to place to place. And so it was the same stuff I reported to you all previously. So I won't bore you with it again. All right, now we're going to go back to item 6A and 6B. So item 6A is a traffic impact analysis. Information was requested by the town board at its November 13th meeting. And we're going to hear from Mr. Bergmark on that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. I did want to add that the traffic engineer that put together the TIA is present tonight and can provide probably a lot better explanation than me, but I will let you know that I did reach out to AMT, who's our contracted engineer. This had been reviewed by DOT, but the board wanted to confirm that AMT had their eyes on this, that standard practices were followed, and in talking with Sam McDonald, who's our lead contact, he said that yes, they had reviewed it, and that standard practices were followed in this, following kind of the ITE trip generation figures that look at study all the historical data on how many trips are typically generated by different uses, and so they went through and made sure that the correct formulas were being used, the correct figures were being used, and they said that all that was true, that those standard practices were followed in this case. One of the individuals that spoke during public comment pointed out that this did stop at Forest Lane. That is absolutely true. It didn't go further north than that in terms of the intersections reviewed. If this had been a bigger development, I'm sure it would have gone further north than that. So if you looked at where 3rd Street intersects, it's over a mile in distance. So it's not as much of a question of is this going to have any impact? And I think this was one of the comments that was made at the last meeting. Any development is going to have some type of impact. Is there a reasonable expectation based on the size of the development, the number of trips that are being generated, for that developer to be responsible for improvements? And basically, as you get further away from the project, that rationale of saying they should be responsible goes further down. I also wanted to comment on the number of trips. One of the public comments, questioned, thought the number seemed low in terms of the number of peak hour trips. And I do want to focus on the fact that this is looking at peak hour, because that's when the impact is felt by the additional trips. That's when it's really creating these traffic congestion issues, is during those peak AM and PM hours. And part of the reason why those numbers are lower is because they're focusing on peak hours. So if you're thinking, oh, well, there's 300 and some homes, and you're going to have a couple of cars, why is this not, why are they looking at 200 and some or 300, not 600? It's because not all those trips are happening during the peak hours. You have some people that might happen to leave early because they got a further drive. You have some people that work afternoon or night shifts. You have some people that are stay-at-home moms or dads or work from home and just all those different reasons contribute to the number of peak hour trips, which is what's really causing the traffic congestion being lower than just what it would be if it was looking at the all day long. But the other times of the day aren't creating an issue for those. They do look at the level of service, at these different intersections, both now, and so they kind of categorize it A through F in terms of how much delay and congestion there is at intersections. And then they look at it, if there's under a no-build scenario, how might that go up over time versus if you built it based on this number of units, how might it go up over time? And even under the build scenario, it was still showing none of them being any lower than a C. So none of them were getting into that D or E or F category. So I wanted to make those statements, and like I said, we have the engineer here that kind of put this together that could definitely give a lot more detailed explanation than myself, but I just wanted to let you know we did have somebody that's representing the town with their eyes on this.
Okay, thank you. So, would engineer like to speak? Traffic engineer?
Thanks a lot. Great honor to be here. My name is Bao Hong Wan. I work with VHB, and I've been doing traffic impact study since 2004. Have done hundreds of TIs in the Triangle area, Apex, Hollis Springs, Fuqua Arena, Cary, and the first time doing project in Wendell. It's an honor to support my service. Regarding TI, I totally agree. What you said. First is peak hour analysis. So the number of trips shown, it actually capture only during peak hours. AM typically is from 7 to 8, and then PM from 5 to 6. So that explain. Hopefully, that explain a little bit about the trip difference. And study area, we did follow the NCDOT. We met with the NCDOT staff. We met at the NCDOT division office, district office. So their study boundary will look at all directions and sort of potential impact and most significant impact at those intersections that we studied. And we come up with a level service table. That's basically what's said before. It's A all the way through F, and NCDOT standard levels E is considered acceptable for a single intersection. And we have C or better. It's like a 2 grade, light grade better than what's acceptable. So that's all I have.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Great.
Just process-wise, I wanted to just kind of clarify, we did close the public hearing at the last meeting. That's part of the reason why we had individuals speaking in the public comment period. We do have the applicant present tonight as well. So at this point, it would be up to the board to kind of deliberate on the information that's been presented, determine. The applicant did agree during the hearing that the conditions that were listed, including a couple by staff and some technical corrections, that he found those all acceptable. But if there were any additional items that the board felt needed to be addressed or added, the applicant would need to agree to those as well.
I have one. My question is to the applicant, and if the applicant would be willing to extend the buffer that abuts the Vicky Powers and Rebecca Olson lot on the southern section. The buffer that is provided, and we'll see if we can get the map up here. There's you correct me if I'm wrong, it's a type B buffer, is that, that's along those 4 lots, or?
Essentially, we have a buffer for abutting rear yard buffer that's specific to when you have abutting rear yards, and I'll circle the area that it captures, or where it's, I'll circle the area that it does not encapsulate right now, that's in question. So along this property line, we did have as technical corrections that the area north of this, that it would need to be in place. Along this stretch, that was not included as a TRC comment, so it would need to be included as as a condition to add it along there. You do have an existing home within this 3.5 acre, 4 acre tract.
Okay, and so that would be my question to the applicant is, if they'd be willing to extend the buffer that's provided to the north all the way down that, property line to that the Vicky Powers and Rebecca Olson property that also abuts. Considering that there is a house on that property, the same as there's, the same as these are residential lots that are to the north of it, whether or not they have homes on them now or not.
Good evening. Fred Smith. I've got my trusty engineer here to help me. He tells me that we'll be happy to extend that buffer, that there will be no problem.
Okay.
Tonight's been a double header. I've been in front of the Clayton Council tonight. I just hot-footed it over here. I understand there was some question about the building that about Ryan Holmes building amenity. I just want to make sure everyone understands that Ryan Holmes has nothing to do with the building of the amenity in Hollybrook, that the building of that amenity will be done by the Fred Smith Company, which has built 6 athletic clubs and 4 golf courses. So we're ready to do that, so you don't need to worry about that. Any other questions for me?
I'll ask my question.
Yeah.
And David, feel free to fill this to whoever you think. Can you talk about the stormwater plan, including the retention ponds, and essentially how we what the plan calls for water to do, what we think water is going to do?
To a certain degree, I may ask for Travis to stand up and try to respond to that more fully than myself. I mentioned at the last meeting, I believe that, you know, one of our requirements, and Wake County enforces our stormwater regulations on our behalf, but one of the requirements is that the post-development flow doesn't exceed peak or pre-development flow. So any new water runoff that's being generated by this, they have to calculate, account for, and capture, and at least delay. Sometimes that might be on-site infiltration. Other times it's just going to be holding until after that storm event has sufficiently passed, and then it will be released into the adjacent water body. So it's still, with the exception of if there's any on-site infiltration, it's still being released into the adjacent creeks. It's just waiting until after the storm events pass. You're not getting that massive, flooding type event and that extra erosion. So they, as part of this development process, they would identify sites where they want stormwater control measures to be, based on, topography and flow. But the details of that wouldn't necessarily be finalized until the next stage. They're doing their construction drawings, so we're not quite at that point yet. Travis, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's basically the process. There are 2 elements. Stormwater is quantity and quality. The quantity is what Dave was addressing. We have to look at the site as an existing condition, establish base flows, and then look at the site in a developed condition and all the increased impervious area gives us a post-development flow. And this property pretty much lends itself to wet detention ponds where we detain the water for a period of time, and then, like David said, in the construction document phase, we design the vertical elements to basically control that runoff to that pre-development level. So we break it out. Our responsibility as the engineers to maintain and match the existing drainage patterns as close as possible, which assists us in hitting that pre-development flow. If you can't redirect it all to one spot and expect to. So, we're responsible for maintaining the downstream condition and not making it worse. That's ultimately our goal and our task. And then with the idea that, the improved upon areas aren't going to infiltrate, which is a big treatment part. So we do have we're given credit as part of those facilities, then that addresses the quality part.
When you say downstream, I think what I'm hearing, and I want to clarify, is downstream or across the street, to a degree. So if it's between you and you say you study your site, we just heard about what we study in the traffic study. When you study your site, are we studying this exact track, or are we studying this area of land, the land you intend to develop and the land around it?
Well, yeah, so I think it will include some off-site area that naturally drains on site. What we do is we pick points of interest, they're called, and they typically will be on the property line. But then we work upstream from those points to establish that drainage area. And then our site, any water that drops on our site anywhere is accounted for in whatever drainage area, however that winds up breaking up. So downstream ultimately winds up being at the property line, but it's different points, if that makes sense.
Anyone else? We had mentioned just a minute ago about a buffer, and there was also a buffer brought up in our public comment. And I wonder if you could pull up the piece of land that was referenced that. I believe the lady said it was her father's land.
So I'm less certain on that. I'm assuming based on the fact that the term berm was used, that this is along Hollybrook Road, I'm assuming.
Okay.
We don't really have any requirements in the UDO for berms specifically, but I don't know which specific tract that might have been, that request was aligned with.
James Green is right below that line. See his house on Selma Road. The whole line is hit all the way down.
Let's see, right here.
So this is a James Green property. So is the comment about having,
Well, I just wanted to make sure, since we were discussing things of that nature, that we covered everyone or gave consideration. The board gave consideration to everyone.
we did have a landscape buffer put in place along, let me change colors here, between the amenity site and the adjoining property.
Okay.
So that was included. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. I drew that in the wrong place. Going back to paint shop days.
Technology.
Trying to make this neighborhood bigger, David.
Okay, sorry, between, there, excuse me.
Okay, so that's not really affecting him then.
But I guess the further up that property line is the longer piece.
Yeah.
To the northeast there. Do you have the other map that actually shows the layout of the streets and the?
Yes.
And,
Yeah, thank you.
Let me clear off. So is that actually working? Nope. Okay. So normally there's not a buffer requirement between residential and residential. The only exception is if you have rear yard to rear yard, we do have language specific to that. Is this showing the area you need, or do you need to?
Scroll down just a little bit.
You need to see.
Because what I'm seeing is
a lot of rear yards.
That's a lot of rear yards.
Touching his yard, his rear yard.
So we generally, and that's a very large tract. Generally we're looking at when you have, a bunch of lots to lots. I don't know if that's gonna be a yard at all. It depends on what happens when that's developed. Well, I shouldn't say if it's not a yard at all, but I don't know if that's gonna be a rear yard. It all depends on what happens on that tract. I could pull up the aerial on iMaps if that would be helpful.
Sure.
His house is up in that corner.
is, there's another house. Are you talking about this, along this tract?
Yeah, that's his house. And all the rest of the land is his.
So, the property, this is the subject property. This triangular piece up here is not actually part of the district. The area that they would be developing that would be adjoining, not that tract, but the remainder of the land kind of behind that tract is along
Right.
this property line. And so, so the reason why that's not shown right now is because we don't really know what's gonna happen in here to say that that's an abutting rear yard or rear yard.
Right, I understand, thank you, okay.
While you're in IMAPs, we scroll down to the southern section,
Sure.
to the other piece we just talked about.
Did you wanna scroll in closer to this or just?
Just close enough so I can see how close that house is to the line.
It's reasonably close.
It is reasonably close. Okay. I think that's the difference there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any other questions, comments?
Gentlemen, my issue is still the same one I said last week, is the density of the homes. When we're butting up against a neighborhood that has an R3 classification, to go to R4, I know they've made some concessions to make it a better R4. I just, that was my concern last week, and I don't see anything that's really done to improve that. We don't have much control on what's put here. We don't have much control on how to fix the roads right now and how to control traffic, but the one thing we can do is at least try to affect the density of this place and affect the amount of people that are coming here as best we can. And this is the only way we have of doing that. And so that's the problem I have. If it was an R3, if it was slightly less congested, slightly less homes, that would make me feel much better about this, because I do know development's coming to this area. It is, and I don't want to thwart that, but I do, in my mind, if I vision the town of Wendell, I vision a lower density, and I keep using the term as we move out toward the country, but a lower density as we move away from the center hub of town, and I feel like we're going and doing the opposite and going with higher densities as we move further away, and that seems a little backwards to my thought process, to my logic. So, while everything sounds nice with the buffers and the burns, and the density is still what really, in the day, bothers me with this development more than anything else. So.
David, you and I spoke on the phone this afternoon, debating that same topic. Just for the public record, what was your opinion that R3 versus R4, how many homes would be decreased if it was R3 versus R4?
So, yeah, I can only kind of give a guess, because it's ultimately would come down to how they specifically lay it out once they have this new lot size. The lot size difference between an R3 and an R4 minimum is R4 allows down to a 6,000 square foot. A R3 requires a 10,000 square foot. Now, in their current layout, they're actually having an average of 8,300 square feet. But if you wanted to give a rough estimate, you said, okay, let's take that amount of area that they have 339 lots on, and their average lot size is 8,300, and instead just take that same amount of square footage and divide it by 10,000 rather than 8,300. You end up getting down to around 280 lots. So that's a rough estimate of what it might be.
Any other questions and comments?
Can I make it, David, it's my understanding that R3 is 3 units per acre.
So
Is that right?
It means, the number means that typically, once you account for your open space, your roads, everything else, you'll generally end up with about 3 dwelling units per acre.
That's three, so R3 would be 3 units per acre. We are below 3 units per acre. We're down around 2.8 units per acre. It doesn't make any difference to me whether we're R3, R4, or conditional use. We're just doing what your staff told us to do. They said that they wanted us to come in here with a conditional thing so you could put the conditions like you're putting there. I don't care whether it's R3, I don't care whether it's R4, or I don't care whether it's conditional. We just want to do whatever you want us to do. And we're not going to quibble over a few lots. Commissioner Boyette brought up last time very, very well that density is what pays the bills, what brings rooftops, and what brings commerce to your community for your tax base. We're happy to do that, but if that's going to give you a problem, we'll do whatever you want us to do. We're not here trying to build a subdivision that you're not proud of. That's why we're going to create amenities probably better than any amenity in your town. We're probably going to do a lot of things like you want to do, and so you just tell me what you want me to do.
Wish I got that at my house.
So I've heard a running theme about lot size density back and forth. That seems to be the prevailing concern that I hear. I understand one's connected to the other. One, so with, I'm a visual person, so let's talk about up at the top, Deerfield, where that stubs in. What differences are you gonna notice between one and the other? I mean, I understand you can notice differences even within that neighborhood, but as far as the density.
We'll scramble it any way you want us to. In 4, you could have, it's my understanding, you could be 50 foot, and we made them 55 feet wide. If you need us to make them 60 feet wide, that's fine. You can rearrange that tract of land almost any way you want. We'll rearrange it however you want us to do it. But at some point in time, R3, you're going to be able to get 3 units per acre if you rearrange it. That's where we are now. We just have more open space. We're doing some things that you want us to do. Whereas if you go to R3, straight R3, you don't have to maybe do all the open space. So we'll do whatever you want. We want you to be proud of this development. And we're trying to present a development that you can be proud of.
I have a question for Mr. Bergmar. If it went to straight R3, what open space requirements what would go away? What requirements would?
So the amount of open space you're required to dedicate is based on your number of units. So if you're going down from R4 to R3 and your unit count goes down some as a result, then your amount of required open space will also go down correspondingly. Now they're providing more open space than what's required right now, so I can't say how exactly that might change because it's not as though they're just giving us exactly what they had to. But the requirement would go down some because the total number of units would go down some.
Okay.
Was it, David, real quick, was it staff's recommendation early on with this applicant that they go R4 versus R3?
It actually fluctuated a little bit. We did recommend that he look at a conditional district because we thought there might be some concerns over the density. If with a flat rezoning, then all you see is this is the zoning. You don't get any idea of the layout. You don't necessarily know that the average lot size ends up being 8,300 compared to just, you might have the fear that it's all going to be a bunch of 6,000 square foot lots if it were R4, for example. So we did recommend that he look at a conditional district just because it gives a little more assurance in terms of what you're actually getting compared to what just the zoning might just tell you what is ultimately allowable. Initially, they actually proposed this as an R3 conditional district because the overall density, as Mr. Smith has pointed out, is really in line with the R3. However, when we kind of got to the planning board and we looked at what the lot size was, in some cases getting down to, when we looked at the lot width that was being allowable, those numbers were actually closer to the R4 numbers, so that there was a little bit of pushback by the planning board. They thought that, hey, this really looks more like an R4 based on the conditions you're putting in here. So it actually switched to an R4 since those minimum lot sizes and the minimum lot widths were really much closer aligned with the R4, even though the overall density wasn't. And that's a result of some of the environmental constraints on this land in terms of your riparian buffers, primarily, that's causing that overall density to be a little bit lower than it might otherwise be.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, since Mr. Smith has said he's agreeable to these changes, from my non-planning background, I feel like this would change things a lot. Does it change much as far as how we improve this right now, or how would we go about? I mean, is it just another condition we just add in here that?
I think that would be a pretty significant change. I think in that case, we'd have to have them put together a revised plan based on what would now be a different lot size minimum if we did R3 rather instead.
Okay.
And then it would have to come back before you.
Why don't we do this? I think we got 339 lots, right?
Correct.
As part of the condition, you can limit how many lots we have, right?
We could, yeah.
How about we agree for 310 lots?
What would R3 give us then?
R3, we could get more than that,
Okay.
depending on how we do it. I'm just trying to meet your needs.
Oh, I understand, I appreciate that.
And make it a viable project. So if I need to reduce it 20 lots, I'll reduce it 20 lots. It's not that big a deal. And the quality of life between 339 lots and 310 lots is not, no one will know the difference. But if that's what you want, that's what I'll do.
Okay.
So if the average before was 8,500, what do we think the average lot size is if we take your number there, which was 290, right?
That's above my pay grade.
Councilman, that could vary. He could keep the exact same lot sizes and add to open space. He could make larger lots and keep the same or less open space.
Mm-hmm.
That speaks to what the planning director was talking about a.
Right.
Yeah, it just depends on how you want to do it. In a lot of the communities I do, we try to make smaller lots to have bigger open space because people can use open space, whereas they can't use but so much on their yard. It just depends on what the municipality wants to have. We can do smaller lots, more open space. We can do larger lots, less open space.
What the developer is assuring in reducing from 339 to 310, and that reduction is reducing the overall density on the total footprint of the property. Mm-hmm. It's reducing traffic count by that number of dwelling units. It's reducing the total residential impact of the development, impervious square foot, unless he builds larger houses. I mean, it's variable. But what that does do is it reduces the density by, someone can do the math to get the exact percentage, but a little less than 10%. 10% being 34 lots, so it's probably somewhere just above 5, close to 7% or so.
I think that we're interchangeably using the word density and lot size.
Yeah, density is the number of people per acre, or number of dwelling units per acre, is what a density is. That's the impact of population on the community as a whole. lot size is, different than density.
I guess I mean, if the impetus, from moving from one zone into the other is lot size, that might not be achieved through just.
Yeah, and my bigger issue is not so much, I mean, the lot size. The lot size is, I don't get too hung up on that one. I mean, but it was more the density was my concern, and I know what you're saying as far as using those terms, not crossing them over. The lot size to me was, I mean, fine, people want different lot sizes, and not everybody wants an acre lot, and, you know, we see homes in Wendell Falls that are, you know, incredibly tiny, so, the density was my concern, so I would be kind of amenable to putting a cap on it, putting a number on it, that kind of compromises with me, so, you know. Thank you. And that seems to be less, not having to go back quite as much, and
Fred,
quite as much, I guess.
Fred's not gonna like what I'm gonna say now, but, I have to say it, it's my job. My concern, and I do really appreciate Fred's willingness to accommodate our concerns and look at modifications to get a product that everybody's, happy with. But one of my concerns is let me bring this back up. In the conditional district, we're approving both the development plan and those list of conditions. If we now change and say that we're gonna reduce by X number of units, I have no idea what we're now approving in terms of the development plan. This could change in a lot of ways that could affect things, and we're just kind of going off the cusp, and I don't know how we say this is, quote, approved. Now, if it were something minor where we said, okay, well, these lots that are backing up to, this property line against that, Mr. Jones owns here, and we're gonna amend these to some of these lines in between, we're gonna widen these to make these all some larger number.
Something more you need
That,
something
okay, we
specific.
know exactly what's changing, we know that, okay, that might reduce this by this many units, something along those lines, that's a clear change, it's not impacting your road alignments, it's not impacting anything else that would have been reviewed as part of this review process. But outside of some kind of clarification like that, there's not really clarity on what this development plan is we're actually approving.
But they could approve maximum of 310 lots. You know that y'all can approve minor changes. Subject that you could say 310 lots, subject to the staff approving the road layout and the lot layout. Then you have control of the changes we're gonna make to accommodate the 310 lots.
Again, my concern is just, we go through a public hearing process that's based on what was presented. Now we might have a different plan, that comes out. If it was something like this, then I agree. I mean, something like that, even though we might not have it drawn before us right now, that's not a big change. We can do it.
Can I clarify, ask the developer, do you keep the road layout and
We
drainage?
would keep it as much like it is as possible.
So it would just be some minor deviation to what was reviewed and
But we have
presented?
talked to staff, we know there are a few changes that we may want to make, and staff has said we can make minor changes. That's all we're talking about. Nothing, there will be almost no change. We'll lose a lot here, or gain a lot there, or whatever, but there won't be a big change, and staff will be able to approve the layout, which will be as close to that as we can make it. I'm just trying to do what
Sure.
what you want. I'd like to leave it like it is, but I'd like to have a project, most of all.
And so what Mr. Smith is referring to in terms of minor changes is, when we approve a conditional district at this stage, there's still gonna be the final development plan. That's essentially your construction drawings. It's expected that there could be some minor things that come up, and one of the jobs of the planning board in reviewing the final development plan is to make sure that it's still in substantial compliance, that nothing big has changed. If there was something that big had changed, then they kick it back to you and say, this is, not just a minor modification. So I think you could include some language in there, and then you're kind of just saying that the general layout here will remain the same, the number of units is going down by X amount, but that if this is determined when the final development plan is put together to not be a, to be more than a minor change, to be a substantial change, then it would have to come back before you for review.
And that's okay with us. That language will be just fine.
Okay.
I'd love to make that motion, I'm just not sure how to do that.
It's gonna be long.
Um,
I'm making notes.
Can I get clarity on the motion I'm making?
Yeah.
Me too. So I'm bumbling through it.
The additional conditions that extend the buffer that was discussed, reduce the overall number of lots to 310, but the general layout remains the same, contingent on annexation. So it's got three things that has to be in it.
Do we need to add something about the town, if the final development plat comes back through, is looking at major changes to come back to us, and?
That, I think that automatically would happen.
Okay.
But ask David.
So if I make a motion to kind of approve everything we've done here based on all the conditions we've kind of laid out tonight, do I need to put any kind of kicker in there that if the town staff find any changes are too large, that's come back to us, or does it automatically come back to us at the final development plat time anyway?
So there's already some language that says that if the final development plan is not in substantial agreement with what's approved, that it would come back before you, because the planning board would review it and make that determination. It might not be bad just to reference it, just because in this case, we're kind of, there might be a little bit more scrutiny to it. But otherwise, I think you're fine to say that we're, approving this plan.
Okay.
And the conditions as presented, with the addition of the one condition for the buffer along that lot on the south side that was mentioned.
Okay.
And that the unit count be reduced to whatever number that is you choose, so long as that can be accommodated with the same general layout.
Okay, all right. So I'll make a motion to approve the R4 conditional district, based on the extending of the buffer along the property that was discussed earlier. Reducing the lot size, the number of lots to 310, and assuming the general layout remains the same, and of course, if not, of course, it comes back to us, and then this is all contingent upon the motion for contingency on the approval of annexation, and that if anything were to come back and deemed to be a major change, it would come back before the board.
Can I clarify that includes the previously discussed
Staff comment.
Staff and
Yes.
planning board?
Please include all staff comments.
Were agreed to by the developer.
Including all those things.
Yes.
Let's say, so including all of previously discussed conditions and technical corrections.
Planning board corrections and everything, yes.
Yep.
Sorry, David.
No, that's a mouthful of emotion.
Yeah. Does everybody have it?
Clear?
Yeah.
Clear as mud.
Everybody clear? Okay, so we have a motion to, I'm not gonna try to restate it, I'm sure I'll leave something out. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I mean, so before we vote on it, I'll just say that, I've had conversations with folks. I feel like I've answered every phone call that I've gotten since last week, which was 3 folks. Everyone I talked to, I had good engaging conversations with, because this is a game of chess. You can move one piece, and I know that sometimes we think we're moving a piece and it changes another. It's all fluid, and while I appreciate the changes that were made, density, lot size, that's not necessarily changing. So I just want to highlight before we vote on this that, gonna come back, but it's gonna be a different shape, essentially. I would like, whatever we have to be the best possible version of itself, so I would hope that moving forward, as things come back, we can, trust the folks that are, in positions, to evaluate these things and not try to, Monday morning quarterback things, because it ultimately just gets messy.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Item 6B is an annexation petition for 115.74 acres of property located adjacent to the Groves of Deerfield subdivision on either side of South Hollybrook Road and identified by PIN numbers 1783921299, 17930200954, 1783837560. My goodness. People forget their manners. 17839470008. Contiguous. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. This item was just on being delayed until we had a agreement on the conditional district, having that in place. So, yeah, we're good to go in terms of the applicant. He just wanted to make sure that he had that in place before annexation was acted upon. And you have a draft ordinance included as one of your attachments to take action on if you're inclined to do so.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Brookmark?
Madam Mayor, make a motion to approve the annexation petition for the parcels of property that were mentioned earlier.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the annexation petition. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, and we're going to go back to number 10, Commissioner's comments, and start with Commissioner Joyner.
There's a lot going on in Wendell. Check out the variety of social media, so I guess tonight I'm not gonna highlight, there's no point for me to point out things in meetings. I'll just highlight that we have a Facebook page and our staff does a really good job of not only using Facebook but Instagram. I found out about social media accounts I didn't even know existed this week. So anytime you want to know something, and 9 times out of 10, if you call me and ask me a question, what I want to do is check Facebook. We're doing a great job on that, and I wanted to applaud staff because it's a busy season and it's hard to keep up with the calendar. The only other thing I wanted to say was that I know that there'll be some celebration comments made as we move down the bench. And I'd like to say that Appalachian State won their game without any need for ties or even getting close. And we'll be heading back to the Sun Belt Championship again, and then on to a new bowl game. So just fortunate that North Carolina has some leadership in football, and it starts in the mountains and then moves down.
I mean, I think as long as your coach didn't get fired, it's considered a successful season, so I'll just say that. I'd like to congratulate the NASA crew that landed a robot on Mars today. And no one else could possibly think of a better way to spend $1 billion than putting a robot on Mars.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Commissioner Lutz?
I just want to make an announcement. This Wednesday evening at 5 o'clock, I know it's be short notice based on watching the video here tonight, but at Grounds Cafe, the area Rotary Clubs are having an open house at Grounds Cafe where you can come and get some information as far as joining their local civic club, and that's at 5 o'clock. That's all.
Commissioner Carroll?
No comment.
Just briefly, I want to remind everybody that before we meet again, the Wendell Wonderland is gonna take place. I'm sure all of y'all will be, you're working real hard and be happy to get that under your belt. It's Friday, December 7th. Performances begin at 5 at the town square on the stage. We're gonna count down the lighting of the tree at 6, and then Santa's gonna come. There's a map and flyer of activities and performances on the Tell Wendell app and the town's website, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those things. So I urge you, I've got a copy right here. I printed one off before I left home today and had one at my seat as well. So grab that and take a look and come out and join us, because it's a fun night. It's a feel-good night in Wendell. People worked real hard to put it together. All right, so do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned.